Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at the Ivy League. Uh, Maybe forget the sports side for just a moment.
Right.
We're talking about those 8 private research universities, mostly in the Northeast. You know, the academic powerhouses.
Exactly. Super selective admissions, deep history, really prestigious places.
And that's what we're diving into. Their history, those surprising connections to U.S. presidents, and a bit about getting in and, well, the costs involved.
It's more than just an athletic conference, that's for sure. We want to give you a good, quick understanding.
So the big 8 are Brown, Columbia, Cornell, Dartmouth, Harvard, Penn, Princeton, and Yale. And what's amazing is most of them, 7 actually, were founded way back in the colonial period.
Yeah, they essentially formed the foundation of higher learning in the colonies. 7 of the original 9 colonial colleges.
Cornell's the outlier there.
That's right. Cornell came later, founded after the Civil War. The others, they were there from the early days.
Okay, so that name, Ivy League, it sounds almost picturesque. Where did it come from? Was it really about Ivy?
Well, yes and no. It is connected to Ivy, but not like a league of 4 schools, like the Roman numeral phi. That's a common myth.
Oh,
The name seems to come from the old tradition of planting ivy on campus, like during class day ceremonies. You see references to Ivy Day or ivy planting at places like Penn back in the 19th century.
Huh. So more symbolic. When did it stick as a name for the group?
A sports writer, Stanley Woodward, seems to be the first to really use ivy in print back in 1933, talking about their football teams.
Okay.
And then Ivy League started popping up more around 1935, sort of as shorthand for these older, academically strong Northeastern schools that also played each other in sports.
But it wasn't official then.
No, not officially. That didn't happen until 1954. That's when they formally created the athletic conference covering all sports, building on an earlier football agreement.
Interesting. And something else I've wondered about. These schools feel very secular now, but I imagine they started differently.
Oh, absolutely. Their origins were often quite tied to specific denominations. Harvard, Yale, Dartmouth. They had early Congregationalist roots.
Right.
Princeton was linked with Presbyterians, Brown with Baptists, though Brown's charter was remarkably progressive about religious freedom from the start.
And Columbia. Penn.
Columbia started as King's College, linked to the Church of England. Penn was technically non-sectarian from its founding, which was unusual, but, key figures involved were definitely Protestant leaders. They've all evolved significantly over time.
It's quite a transformation. And you mentioned sports. Even before the league was official, they were competing, weren't they?
Definitely. Long before 1954. Think about rowing. The Rowing Association of American Colleges started way back in 1870. It was basically these schools.
The first intercollegiate league.
In the U.S., yes.
Yeah.
And the Harvard-Yale football rivalry.
Mm-hmm.
That kicked off in 1875. So the competition was already brewing.
So what finally made them formalize it into the Ivy League?
The big step was the Ivy Group Agreement in 1945. It started with football, setting shared standards for academics, finances, and athletics.
And a key part was?
A really key part. No athletic scholarships. That was fundamental. Athletes had to meet the same admission standards and get aid based on need, just like everyone else.
Wow, okay.
And then in 1954, they just expanded that whole framework to cover all the sports. That's when the Ivy League, as we know it, officially began.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. The influence, especially on American leadership. The number of presidents from Ivy League schools is, well, pretty staggering.
It really is. It's quite something. 16 out of the 45 U.S. presidents have been alumni of an Ivy League university, either for undergrad or graduate degree.
16, that's a huge percentage. Can you run through some of them?
Sure. I mean, it starts right near the beginning.
Yeah.
John Adams, Harvard. He was actually the first president to graduate from college at all. Then James Madison from Princeton. John Quincy Adams, also Harvard. William Henry Harrison attended Penn for a bit. Rutherford B. Hayes, Harvard Law. Teddy Roosevelt, Harvard undergrad, started at Columbia Law.
And it keeps going?
Oh, yeah. Taft from Yale. Woodrow Wilson from Princeton. FDR from Harvard undergrad and Columbia Law. JFK started at Princeton, then went to Harvard. Gerald Ford from Yale Law.
Okay, quite the list. More recent ones.
George H.W. Bush, Yale. Bill Clinton, Yale Law. George W. Bush, Yale undergrad and Harvard Business School. Barack Obama, Columbia undergrad and Harvard Law. And Donald Trump graduated from Penn's Wharton School after transferring.
So 12 got their bachelor's degrees there. And fascinating that 4 were transfers. And John Adams, 1755 from Harvard. That really anchors it historically.
It's a remarkable through line, isn't it? And if you look recently, since 1989, Joe Biden is the only president without an Ivy League degree.
That really puts it in perspective. The pipeline, if you will, has been incredibly strong.
It certainly suggests a significant role these institutions have played in shaping generations of leaders.
Okay, so bringing it to today, getting into one of these schools, it's famously difficult.
That's putting it mildly. Yeah, they are among the most selective universities anywhere. For the class entering in, say, fall 2024, the class of 2028, many had acceptance rates under 6%.
Under 6%.
Yeah, places like Columbia, Harvard, we're talking maybe 3 or 4% acceptance.
Yeah.
It's incredibly competitive.
I remember hearing about 2021 being a particularly tough year.
It was. Record numbers of applications poured in, which naturally drove acceptance rates to historic lows. The talent pool applying is just immense from everywhere.
Now, the cost of attending is obviously high, but these universities also have enormous resources, right? Their endowments.
They absolutely do. Massive endowments. Billions, sometimes tens of billions of dollars. Harvard's is the largest in the world, over $50 billion last I checked.
Wow.
And these huge resources allow them to provide, pretty significant financial aid.
So even though they don't give athletic scholarships, like we said, the aid is substantial.
Exactly. That's the model. It's all need-based financial aid. Your ability to pay is assessed, and they aim to meet the demonstrated need based on academic admission, not athletic prowess.
Right. So just to wrap up our deep dive here, we've journeyed from the colonial roots and the story behind the Ivy name.
Through the formal league creation.
Highlighted that incredible connection to the U.S. presidency.
Yeah, the leadership aspect is key.
And touched on today's reality. Super tough admissions, but also significant financial aid resources.
It really shows the Ivy League is much more than sports. It's this deep history, academic influence, and a real footprint on American leadership.